You gonna talk about the referees?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Talk about the referees.
What's the UIL gonna do? Let me in? Okay, cool. We'll just send somebody else.
I'll be like, nah, dude. Don't let that mess get in. Put him on the other side of the wall.
He's the bad guy. Don't let him in.
Recon Podcast, episode number 4. Chris Sanchez, Paul Rodriguez. It is our first Friday night, Paul. How are you feeling? You look a little tired right now.
I'm a little tired, a little sweaty. I forgot what it was like to roam those sidelines, especially with the game I was at tonight. There was 42 points scored and only one team scored points.
Yeah, you were at the Lockhart Travis game. That was out at House Park, and that was tonight. I took out a couple of games in myself. I went out to Nelson Field, first LBJ and Elgin, and then I went out to the field, ran into what started out as a really just a ugly game up until halftime, 14-7 lead for Conley over Austin High. Ended up now, as we speak, a 51-49 lead for Austin High. We'll get you hopefully a ending there, final here before we get done with this episode 4 of the Recon Podcast. But first, before we get to tonight, Paul, let's take it back to last night. There's our little Back to the Future sound there. Thursday night game last night, Paul. You went down to the Taco Shack Bowl, Anderson versus McCallum. They actually let you on the sidelines, right?
Yeah.
It's because it's difficult. I've been to the Taco Shack Bowl. It's difficult to get on the sidelines at House Park. First of all, there's not a whole lot of room on the sidelines at House Park. And so they are very selective on who they let in onto the sidelines. But Paul Rodriguez, he just had to flash his Recon athlete badge, and they were like, oh, come on in, sir. We know who you are. Your thoughts about the game last night? I'll give you mine, even though I wasn't there. But you first.
But yeah, shout out to AISD and Lou Moore for all his team that let us, pretty much roam the sidelines that we choose. But if y'all don't know about House Park, I'm just going to tell y'all this. You better go early or you better get ready to park 4 or 5 blocks away because that parking garage ain't no joke. I just played it safe and parked on the 4th level every single time. But getting back to that matchup with McCallum and Anderson, it ended up in a very lopsided ending, but that was not to the fault of the McCallum Knights. It was due to the untimely event of an injury to their star quarterback, Cole Davis, early on in the first couple of drives. I'm not really sure of what the injury was, but I did see him on the sidelines on the trainer's table with a heavily taped and a heavily iced left knee. So one can only think. But stepping in to fill the shoes was sophomore Jackson Rosales, who did an amazing job. This guy is going to be the future. He played very well and was composed. The only thing that I saw that his game needs to improve on is awareness. And how do you gain awareness? Repetitions. So shout out to Jackson Rosales. He did well. The biggest player, though, who stood out last night was defensive tackle and right guard Carbajal. This young man was an outstanding player last week, all district selection last year, and I was just purely impressed with this young man's just straight flat nastiness. This dude, and I was kind of assessing him while he was playing last night. The guy is due to his height, he's easily a D2 lock offensive guard, possible center. But this guy could play at the Sam Houston States at DT. He's a plug. This dude is 6 foot, 320. Damn. If they're telling me the truth, but the dude finishes on his blocks. He's pancaking guys through the whistle, and unfortunately, due to some highly questionable calls by the officials last night, he was unfortunately asked to leave the game due to just purely playing the game the way I used to play it and probably the way you used to play it back in the day. The game has changed, and I understand it's changed for the safety and the well-beings of all athletes, especially at the amateur level. Mm-hmm. But the referees in this game kicked off the night by calling numerous penalties on the sideline warnings for McCallum. And I actually got this information from one of the law enforcement officers there at the game last night, where they were calling penalties because the media was too close to the sideline. And then the second one,
did you get a penalty, Paul?
I didn't get a penalty at all.
Are you sure?
I was on Anderson's side. That was the thing. And the other thing I like to do is I like to hang out in the end zones because that's where I get good angles.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's just beneficial for me. But I stay out of the other thing, too, is I'm too slow to get out of the way, Chris.
That's true.
I'm just too slow. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, we old.
Yeah, but I just thought it was amazing due to the lopsidedness of the calls that majority of them went against McCallum. But let's give a little bit of shine to the men of the hour, the Anderson Trojans,
absolutely,
who just dominated this game. Their running back Barron had an amazing touchdown run that he crossed the field, double backed, outran the pursuit angles, and scored a touchdown. I think he had 3 touchdowns on the night last night, which was just sheerly amazing. There was a gross-to-gross connection, QB to wide receiver fade in the end zone on the Lamar side of the field. Mm-hmm. So that would have been the Anderson side since Anderson was the home team last night. I was just sheerly shocked that McCallum really couldn't shut down Anderson's offense, but, I mean, I can understand why you're shorthanded you're shorthanded on the defensive line with Carbajal out, and Anderson's athletes were just a little bit better than McCallum's athletes last night.
Yeah, and you have to shout out the coaches, too, for Anderson. At least I do. Jeff Rogers, offensive coordinator, former Westwood Warrior offensive guard back in class of 97. He went over to Anderson from Pflugerville High School. When Coach Taylor went from McCallum to Pflugerville. Coach Rogers went from Pflugerville to Anderson as an offensive coordinator. This is his second year, and he's got that Anderson Trojans offense really rolling along. And I think we saw it last night. 29-7 was the final score, and we got to shout out to our homie, Mr. Snoop Daniel.
Yeah.
On the Recon podcast, he called a 21.5 point favorite of Anderson spread. Anderson being the favorite on there, 29-7, a 22-point win for Anderson. So if you had Anderson covering, you won. Of course, nobody actually bets on high school football, but
right,
that was pretty dang impressive by Snoop Daniel. Shout out to Snoop and our crew and our friends over at FanStan ATX. Last night as well, I went over to a couple of games with Snoop. We went out to first Kelly Reeves Athletic Complex to see Westwood and Eastview. Saw the first half of that game. That game was 14-14, Paul, to begin, or in the first half at halftime. I was very impressed, of course, with quarterback RJ Martinez. We've been talking about him for the past year with our time on FanStan ATX and now here on the Recon podcast. RJ, great quarterback. He knows what he's doing. He reads the defenses. He's just a pure leader. But I think right now, Julian DeBerry is a guy that I have to talk about. Junior wide receiver for the Westwood Warriors. I think that's the guy that might end up being his star receiver. We've talked about Oliver Yu and some of the other guys there, Robbie Jang as well.
Yep.
But I really think that junior wide receiver Julian DeBerry is going to be a guy to watch out for the Westwood Warriors. And unfortunately, Westwood losing to Eastview last night. But you got to shout out to Eastview. They hung in there. I was talking to Assistant Athletic Director George Herman, former Pflugerville high school coach, there on the sideline. And he kind of expected, as well as I did, a Westwood victory. And kind of one of those that we thought would be a walkaway for the Westwood Warriors, but it wasn't that. Eastview came out. They played very well. They played really well on defense, and they were able to hang in there and then just get a goal line stance to win that game last night. Eastview in overtime, 42-35. Got to shout out to Eastview Patriots, 1-0. Now Westwood sitting at 0-1. My Warriors, man, I'm going to tell you right now, their defense improved from last year as far as where they were. Position-wise.
Okay.
They were always in position to make the tackle.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to making the tackle, they had some difficulties there. So we had a lot of catching rather than tackling, a lot of flat feet, not driving through the ball carrier. It was really one of those situations where if Westwood was able to make these tackles, they would get that ball back to RJ Martinez in that offense. And I think they would have won that game handily. But you got to, like I said, you got to tip your hat to Eastview. They were able to keep that ball moving and just get that victory last night in overtime. So shout out to Eastview. I think Westwood's going to come back next week and, hopefully catch a W because, I'm a homer. Class of 98 Westwood Warriors. Next week they are at Austin High, who Austin High is in a barn burner right now. We'll get to that one as well. But also last night had a little bit of history.
Yeah.
Recon was there along with Snoop Daniel, Fanstand ATX. We went out to, after Westwood and Eastview, we went out to AC Bible Stadium and catch the first ever victory for the Weiss Wolves. They win over the Leander Lions. I tell you what, that was really, really exciting to see for the Weiss Wolves.
Let's just give it up real quick. Can I get 2 claps for the Weiss Wolves? Ready on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
23-14 wins over Leander. I'm going to tell you what, their defense, the exact opposite of what I saw from Westwood. Their defense, undersized, but they would come up and they would hit these Leander guys. Well, Leander had the size over Weiss, for sure.
Yeah.
Pound for pound, Leander was the bigger team. As far as the aggressiveness goes, the Weiss Wolves and that defense, very impressive. I tell you what, man, I was just floored by how these guys, this defense, would swarm to the football, not only get there, but there wouldn't be just one guy tackling the ball carrier. There'd be multiple guys, 3, 4, maybe even 5 Weiss Wolves on that ball carrier every single time. And to me, that's why the Weiss Wolves won their very first game ever in the history of the program last night.
And based off that description, it sounds like last year they may have been playing individually, and this year they're playing like a wolf pack. And it's awesome to see that culture shift. And I'm pretty sure it's predicated on all the success that Glenn had. And they're saying, hey, why not us?
Right.
Why not us? And that culture shift probably clicked up in their head. And now they're just playing with reckless abandon. And as long as they can play that way, hey, man, more props to you. And sometimes it's all about what's in your chest, what's in your heart, and how you play the game.
Yeah, the Weiss Wolves are going to try to get a win streak going next week against Canyon Lake. And we can move on to tonight. Friday night, it was a big Friday night, the first Friday night games that we went to. You went out to Travis High School versus your Lockhart Lions. Paul Rodriguez, your assessment.
Those fighting Lockhart Lions floored me tonight. I was just in complete amazement. Coach Todd Moebs is a man with a mission, and he is instilled it into those young men at Lockhart High School. Chris, this is, they say that cliche. This ain't your mama's barbecue or dish or what have you. These young men are playing, and they're aggressive. And I don't mean a superficial word of aggressive. These young men are coming in and they're playing like guys I see play on Saturdays. They're coming in with their whole body to make a tackle. And when one holds one guy up, the other 2 are coming to finish him off. And the offensive line is something that just stuck out to me. These young men are huge. I've never seen Lockhart have a line this big. The only time I can remember is back when I was playing. And when I was playing, we had guys who the shortest guy was 5'10", averaging 230. And the shortest guy on this team looked like he was 5'9", 245. And the tallest guy looked like he was 6'4", 230. These guys are big, they're mean, they're aggressive, and they play through the whistle of the referee. So shout out to Lockhart. They came into House Park and put a hurting on Travis, 42-0. I think that ended up being the final.
Yep.
But shout out to Robert Branch. I saw this young man play. He wears the infamous 88, playmaker. Dude looks like Baby Dez. No joke. This dude looks like Baby Dez. He even had a pass go through his hands while he was going up. But the dude caught a fade. It was a 50-50 ball right on the goal line. He went up and came down with the touchdown. Shout out to Garcia, their fullback, 3 touchdowns on the day, just flat out getting after it. But this is a new offense, Chris. This offense, it's RPO. They're running the spread. It's not like the slot T that Lockhart was famous for years past, like going back to 2010. So it's a new culture. It's a new change in the game. And shout out to Coach Mobis, because he went out and solicited Under Armour and got these men new chassis.
Oh.
They got black matte lids with maroon decals icy white uniforms for away jerseys, and they got mix and match chassis so they can just be creative on what they want to do. But they got something special. They got an all-black kit, an all-black chassis. I'm waiting for them to see maybe in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And I think Lockhart coming out there 42-0, after getting a new coach.
Yeah.
Very impressive. I mean, I think when you're, changing coaches, you're changing offensive styles, you're changing defensive styles, you're basically trying to change everything about this whole team in about 6 months, 6 to 8 months. That's all you got from, the time that the new coaches come in until the first whistle blows. That's not a whole lot of time. So for them to come out there and put 42 points up on the board, granted, Travis High, probably not the most talented team,
right? But
being able to just do that, you're going out there and you're beating the teams that you're supposed to beat.
Right.
That's what the Lockhart Lions did tonight.
One more quick thing before we move on to the next thing. The one thing that stood out to me, and this is where the culture shift has come from. When I saw young men who were dropping the ball or who maybe missed a tackle, they didn't say, "Oh, shucks." They were mad at themselves. They'd pop themselves on the head. They'd reload. And then that next play, that next down, they were the ones making the play because they knew their coaches were holding them accountable. And that's what I see the biggest change in that team for Lockhart. And, hey, if they want to play with the big boys, that's the way they're going to have to get it done.
Yeah, and I think I saw a little bit of that at the second game I went to tonight, the Austin High Maroons and the Conley Cougars. Austin High with the 51-49 win over Conley. I saw that with Coach Rosenthal.
Wow.
I really did tonight. I saw tonight with Rosenthal, even when it looked grim for the Austin High Maroons, they couldn't stop Demetrius Gardner, number 20, running back for the Conley Cougars.
That dude's
this
sick.
Dude went beast mode several times over Austin High. But Coach Rosenthal never showed, emotion, wasn't getting down on his guys. All he did was encourage, and he knew that Charles Wright, Grayson Davis, Kobe Callbacker, those guys on the offensive side of the ball will be able to get things done. It was a back and forth game. Like I said, it was 14-14 at half, or 14-7 Conley winning at halftime. It was a barn burner, a race to the finish line. Austin High with the 51-49 win. 2-point win. And I will tell you where those 2 points came from.
Okay.
This was one of the most odd sequences I've seen. Austin High, interception, or they throw an interception. It's one of those tipped balls. Conley Cougars go down, score a touchdown. Austin High, they line up for the extra point. Conley Cougars line up for extra point. Flag. Move it back. Extra point attempt again. Flag. Move it back. Conley's probably about on the 25-yard line. Coach says, you know what? Let's go out there and try to go for two. We're not going to be able to make this extra point. Kicking game. Talked about the kicking game before. Kicking game is very important.
Insurance.
Conley says, let's try to go for an extra 2-point conversion. Quarterback, bad snap. He tries to do what he can, but by the time he gets the ball, he's got the Austin High defensive line on him. Loses on a fumble. Scoop and score. 2 points for Austin High. That is the difference.
Wow.
51-49. 2 points that came off of 2 penalties on an extra point, Paul. That has got to be just a thorn in the side for those coaches over at Conley, because they honestly, there were several times when I thought, and even on the messenger,
right?
I even said, I was like, I think Conley's gonna pull away from this one.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, so guys, shout out to Coach Rosenthal. I was really impressed by the fact that they were able to come back and take this game. LBJ, another team tonight, Paul, that was in all black, which was kind of weird because it's still 105 degrees outside.
Yeah, even at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, even at 7 o'clock kickoffs, it's still 100 degrees. But LBJ in all black, their start of their game, first play of the game, Andrew Makuba.
They
were trying to get the ball to him.
Yeah,
it was the throw from the quarterback was a little hot. It's first play.
Right.
Bounces off his hands, interception. Elgin gets the ball, drives it to the 1 yard line. Defense stops him. 4th and 1. LBJ defense, big stand for them. Right after they had just turned the ball over to Elgin, got the big stand. 2 plays later, Makuba, 94 yards the other way, touchdown, and that's the way LBJ was the big play after big play for them tonight. 35-27 winners over Elgin. You got to shout out to Elgin though; they were able to hang with the J, and I think right now I'm really impressed with these offenses because we know offenses. That's the name of the game in high school.
It's easy.
But, at the beginning of the season, a lot of times offenses aren't, they're not doing so well.
They're not clicking
They're
yet.
not clicking yet. And so with all these points on the board, you see Georgetown 49 points over Abilene Wiley. Del Valley had 47 over McNeil, 47-29. Westlake 48 points over Belton. Belton 0 points, so Westlake 48-0. All of these teams out here, that 7-on-7,
preach
that spring game,
preach.
That is what's really getting these guys ready. I think for the fall football, and I was really impressed by LBJ, Elgin, Connolly, Austin High. All 4 offenses that I saw tonight were able to move the ball with pretty much ease and almost impunity when they were trying to get into the end zone. So these offenses got it clicking on the very first night. It was a warm night, so I guess it wasn't too hard for them to get warmed up.
But Chris, we know we see it all the time. These young men, they don't have an off season.
True,
because they go from football to another sport, and then when that sport's over, they got 7-on-7 that kicks off in what, May, late April, all the way through July. And then what are they doing while they're doing that? They're still training with private coaches that we see all over social media. And they always are training. Quarterbacks are always training. And that's why we have such a huge plethora of them located all throughout Central Texas who are just doing big things right now.
Yeah, so all of these offensives tonight putting up big points. Games that we went to, Lockhart 42-0 over Travis. Austin High 51-49 comeback win over Connolly. And, of course, LBJ with the 35-27 win over Elgin. Next week, Thursday night games. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go to yet, but I tell you what, Paul, this is completely different than being in studio, and it's exciting, man. It's exciting to be on the sidelines. You shout out to the crew over at Nelson Field. Shout out to Todd Raymond over at the Field and his crew over there. Letting me on the sidelines, even though they don't know who a Recon athlete is yet.
Oh, they will.
But they will. So it's an exciting time for Recon athletes. It's an exciting time for all of these kids. I heard one of the parents yell at me, "Oh, yeah, that's my boy. He's going to go to college."
Good.
I was like, all right.
Good.
Yeah, he's going to – all right. We'll try to help him out there on Recon athlete. So, hopefully Zach Lucero will give us a call a little bit later. We do want to talk with him about Vandergrift and Cedar Park. Vandergrift 17-0 shutout win. Of course, that was at Monroe Stadium. Very impressive for the Vandergrift Vipers to shut out Ryder Hernandez in that Cedar Park offense. Hopefully, I can catch maybe a replay of that game maybe tomorrow or Sunday.
Yeah, definitely shut me up. I was picking Cedar Park and rolling with them on that one. But shout out to them. Dawson, let me get that back. Drew Dawson led the Vipers in true Coach Sanders fashion. Low scoring, controlling the ball, making sure his defense ensures a victory by not letting anybody score any points and then putting up just enough to keep that lead. 17-0 Vandy over Cedar Park. Just an amazing job by Coach Sanders and his squad. But I'm sure Cedar Park's going to bounce back real soon and real fast.
Yeah, and just to go over some other scores real quick, Liberty Hill over Glenn 41-13. We had Arlington Martin beat Lake Travis 35-14.
Wow.
Aikens 47, Crockett 0, Lehman 24 over New Braunfels Canyon 21. Shout out to the Lehman Lobos. They almost didn't have a team this year. I heard had a lot of guys transferring, and just very thin numbers over in Lehman, but they're getting their first win over New Braunfels Canyon, 24-21. Cedar Ridge, 35-29 over Temple. Very impressive win for Cedar Ridge. Hayes dropping 41 over San Marcos, 41-13. Georgetown, Abilene Wiley, Georgetown winning that 49-19. Bastrop with a 1-point win, 28-27. Del Valley 47, McNeil 29. Round Rock 42, Harker Heights 34. Dripping Springs and Tybee. This was a defensive game, 14-13. The Drip over the Antlers. And, of course, Hendrickson winning last night 21-7, along with Stony Point over Killeen 25-20. And the one game that we didn't really talk about from last night was Bowie's 42-21 win over the Pflugerville Panthers. The Bowie Bulldogs, very impressive win, especially in a rivalry game like Bowie and Pflugerville. That has become a rivalry over the years, Paul.
Right. Shout out to Trinidad Sanders, man. Just stay healthy this year so you can get that season and keep Bowie just rolling. I'm looking forward to see how Bowie's going to match up with their future matchup against Hayes. I think that's really going to lock up the 4th spot. But shout out to the Bowie Bulldogs' big victory over Pflugerville.
All right, so that's going to be it for week 1 of the Recon podcast. We're going to check out some more games next week. Paul, you got something else?
Yeah. Everybody, if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe. Bottom left of the screen, turn on the bell. Bottom left of the screen, turn on the bell, so we'll let you know when they come out.
All right, for Paul Rodriguez, I'm Chris Sanchez, Recon Podcast, Episode 4. We'll talk to you on Wednesday. We will do some college football, do some recap of and get ready for the NFL season.
Yeah.